Hi, and welcome everybody. My name is Scott Royal Smith here with the Real Estate Nerds podcast. If you guys know me, you know that I'm the CEO of Royal Legal Solutions, the one-stop shop for everything asset protection, estate planning, tax insurance. And we also have the pleasure of having Rod Khleif, as we have many guests on the show that are part of our deal network, people that we know for some time to be reputable people, worth taking a look at in the world of investing that can be so crazy with so many deals out there. 99% of them are absolute garbage. You got to be able to find the right operators and the right people if you're going to want to have true passive income and true peace of mind with your wealth. So, Rod, thanks for coming on to the show here today, brother. And I'm wondering if you'd share with us a little bit about your wealth, your wealth journey, so people can get to know you and know
Oh,
what you've been through to get here.
it's an illustrious journey, let me tell you, with a lot of peaks and valleys. So I'm a Dutch immigrant. I was born in the Netherlands. I immigrated when I was 6 years old with my brother Albert, my mother's Vansha. We ended up in Denver, Colorado. We didn't really have much growing up. In fact, I remember eating expired food. We shopped at an expired food store when we first arrived, and we drank powdered milk with our cereal in the morning because it was cheaper than real milk. And trust me, it sounds better than it is. And I remember wearing clothes from the Goodwill and the Salvation Army all the way through junior high school till I finally lied about my age at Burger King so I could get a job when I was 14 flipping burgers to have enough money to buy my own clothes. And I'm sure you've got listeners had it harder than I did. But I knew I wanted more. And luckily, my mom had an incredible work ethic. So she babysat kids so we'd have enough money to eat. And she was a bit of an entrepreneur with her babysitting money. She actually invested in the stock market successfully, and she also invested in real estate. Well, her first real estate acquisition was the house right across the street from us that she bought when I was about 14 for about 30 grand. And then when I was 17, she told me she'd made $20,000 in her sleep, that it had gone up in value 20 grand. I was like, what? Screw college, I'm getting into real estate. So I went, I got my real estate license, and I was going to get rich selling real estate. Well, my first year in real estate, I made about 8 grand. I was still living at home. Second year, maybe 10, 12 grand. But my third year, I made over $100,000, which back in 1980 was some real money. And so what happened between year two and year three that caused me to 10x my income? Well, what happened was I'd met a guy, was actually dating his daughter, that taught me about the importance of mindset and psychology, and how really 80 to 90% of your success in anything is your mindset and psychology. And, fast forward to today, I've owned over 2,000 houses that I've rented long-term in 3 states. I own thousands of apartment units now. In 2006, my net worth went up $17 million while I slept. And you might say, wow. And I said, wow. And I got a head so big, I could barely fit it through a door. I thought I was a real estate god. And, when that happens, God of the universe, whatever you believe, will give you a nice little smackdown. Well, that was 2008. In 2008 and 9, I lost $50 million conservatively. And so, what I'm known for talking about on my podcast, I host the largest commercial real estate podcast in the world now. We're over 20 million downloads. It's called Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. And what I'm known for talking about on there is the mindset it took that 50 million to lose in the first place. And probably as important, or maybe more important, is the mindset it took to recover from losing that. So that's certainly a side road we can go down if you'd like, Scott. But I'm actively investing in multifamily. Like I said, I in thousands of doors right now. I was mentioning to you before we started recording, I've got a beautiful 200 unit asset in San Antonio under contract that we'll be raising money for soon, and certainly can give you your peeps some guidance on how to evaluate an operator, number one, a multifamily operator like a syndicator, and the questions to ask and so on and so forth. So we can take this wherever you want to take it, brother.
Yeah, Rod, I mean, I love your story, man. And I
Thanks.
think so many people are actually, in this boat where, they're building wealth. They don't want to lose their wealth, right? And the ways you can lose your wealth, right, is you can start getting over leveraged. You can you can make some critical mistakes along the way. But the biggest one that I hear people that are really concerned about is about actually getting into bad deals. Bad deals with
Let's
poor operators. Is
let's
that
talk about it.
yeah,
Let,
I
let's
was
talk.
wondering, is that what you found too, or is like I'm curious, as in a macro
Yeah,
perspective, is what are the major ways that people are actually losing wealth after they built
sure.
it?
Sure. Well, I will tell you, and I hate it because it's a black eye for the industry, but a lot of operators in their, I hate to use the word greed, but that's really what it was, to ramp pro forma projections on their returns, they use onerous debt, which is called bridge debt. So, the safe debt is conforming Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac debt that you get on performing stabilized assets. Well, they would use this bridge debt. Bridge debt was really put out there to bridge the gap between an asset that's not performing and get an asset performing and then refinance it with this conforming debt. Well, bridge debt, which is what a lot of these operators used because they got higher loan to values, and of course, the less money in the deal, the higher the returns. So they'd use these bridge loans to get the higher, to be able to show higher returns to their investors. Well, that debt is adjustable rate. And we all know what's happened with the interest rates. And also when that debt, and it's very short term, and when that debt comes due, you've got to refinance into another bridge loan. And then you've got rate caps to think about. And I will tell you, I think we're headed for some serious pain in this country with these operators that got that debt. There's a lot of debt coming due in the next year and year and a half, well, really between now and the end of next year. I think it's like $500 billion in multifamily debt alone. And so, those operators either have to sell or they have to refinance. And sales are down 85% right now. Sales are way down. And refinancing, again, is very difficult because the property has to meet what's called debt service coverage requirements. So, in my world, in commercial multifamily, they're not looking at my income and my ability to service the debt. They're looking at the property's ability to service the debt. And it's called a debt service coverage ratio. And you have to meet that ratio to get the debt. And so, if you've got higher interest rates, it's very difficult to meet that, so operators are having to come up with millions of dollars just to get a lender to sniff the loan, but then they have to come up with what's called a rate cap, which caps the interest rate on that loan for a period of time. To give you some contrast here, back in 2020, you could get a $100 million rate cap for 3 years at 3%. So that means on $100 million, your interest rate's not going to go up more than 3% over 3 years. That was $23,000, okay? That same rate cap for 1 year, forget 3 years, you'd never get it. For 1 year today is 2.3 million. Actually, that was about 8 months ago. It's probably more than that now. It was 2.3 million for that same rate cap. So, these operators that did these onerous loans are having to do capital calls on their investors. Some of the deals are going south. I hate it, but they are. And they're, some of these deals are going into foreclosure, and regretfully, those investors lose the money they have invested in those deals. And so it's really important when you're evaluating evaluating an operator, that you find out for example, a simple thing is to find out what kind of debt they're getting on that deal, because bridge debt is still out there and there's still operators dumb enough to put it on these deals. So, you want to be really careful with that. Now, I've got a free resource. If you're an investor, if you text the word GP questions, that's for general partner questions, GP questions to 72345. I've got a list of about 50, 60 questions you should ask a general partner before you even consider working with them. Okay. So again, GP questions to 72345. Now, and certainly one of those questions is, what kind of debt are you putting on this deal? And so, like I said, I've got a deal right now that I'm raising money for. I'll be starting to raise money for it here in a couple of weeks. I don't know when this episode goes live, but the screaming deal. It was under contract for 26 million a few months ago. The deal fell through. We're getting it for 20. We're paying $100,000 a door for this 200 unit asset in San Antonio. It's about a mile away from another 296 unit asset. We already know that's our best performing asset. We've got an incredible management company and that market's incredible. So it's very exciting. The units are large. It's just a beautiful asset. It's on a lake. It's just fantastic. And we're getting it for $100,000 a door. The property right next door sold for $135,000 a door last year. So, give you an idea, so deals were already upon us, and I've been waiting. I haven't bought a deal in over a year. This is the first one I'm buying in over a year because, there's been a lot of greed. Warren Buffett's famous quote, be fearful when others are greedy, right? But then be greedy when others are fearful. And fear is coming into play right now with these interest rates and inflation and everything else. So, and if you're interested in talking to me about my deal, I can only take accredited investors. Text the word partner to 72345. Or actually, it's interesting. That's right. We just did a webinar on buying distressed assets and what to look for in an operator in that regard. If you go to, this is a lot to remember, but if you go to CRE Cash Flow Club, CREE Cash Flow Club, there's a website there that I think is the best resource in the business for learning this business, learning how to invest passively. There's free books there, there's articles, there's videos, there's emails. It's incredibly comprehensive. So that's creecashflowclub.com, CREE cashflowclub.com. Or if you're driving, I think if you just text the word club to 72345, we'll send you that link. But that's an incredible resource, Scott, a free resource for your peeps here as well. So there's a couple of them there. There's the questions to ask a partner, and then there's the club that's got all these free things that you can check out. But you got to be careful. You work your ass off to make this money. You better don't be lazy when you're evaluating where to put it, right? Do you agree with me, Scott?
Yeah, man. It's I think it's really the most important part is that people get frustrated because they're sitting on the cash, they don't have a place to deploy it, or they just don't know. Like they don't know what are the 70 questions that they should be getting to. And I think those are great resources.
Thank you. Yeah, and by the way, in fact, forget the book because that's at Cree Cash Flow Club. It's one of the free books there. So just text club to 72345. Go to Cree Cash Flow Club. Even if you're not accredited, you still learn a ton. And there are people out there that are doing deals with non-accredited investors. I'm just not one of them, but you'll learn a ton. And so, yeah, I'm
curious.
You got to educate yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got to educate, right? Like we're really big at that with everything that we do, and like at Royal, like my company, Royal Legal Solutions, what we focus it on like all the asset protection pieces of like anonymity and types of LLCs and trusts, and how do we do tax planning and the estate planning and how that like ties together, right? That's like back end of what wealth requires, especially wealth and real estate and a one-stop shop. And we actually put 11 ebooks, about 1,000 hours of videos, all for free, like they're like on our website in the back end. Because there's like the done for you stuff that you can do, but there's also then the need to get educated to even know that what you're doing is the right thing, right? And that's where you can't skip that part, because otherwise you're just kind of taking it on faith.
You work so hard to earn that money, and I see people give it to a stockbroker that they're a salesman. They don't even know how to study the stocks like an analyst would, or an operator, real estate operator that just is brand new, wet behind the ears, hasn't got a track record. By the way, if you really want to learn this business, if you really want to learn what I do, I teach multifamily. I've taught literally tens of thousands of people over the years. I have a virtual boot camp coming up as well. If you go to rodslinks.com or text the word links to 72345, I'm giving you guys way too much stuff in one call here, but I've got a virtual boot camp coming up January 6th and 7th, and if you use the code ROYAL, you can come for $97. So I don't sell anything at this 2-day boot camp. It's right here in this studio, 2 full days of training about this business. And honestly, I'd encourage you to do that, because then you'll really have a great understanding of the multifamily business, how syndication works, what to look for in a deal, so on and so forth. And again, for less than $100, and I don't sell anything, it's kind of a no-brainer. So if you go to rodslinks.com or text the word links to 72345 and go to the bootcamp site, you use the code ROYAL when you check out, and you come for $97. It'll be about $400 or $500 by the time it rolls around, but that's if you really want to get up to speed, do that, because that's kind of 16 hours of this. So.
I think that's a beautiful idea. I encourage everybody to do the immersive types of education, especially when it's early on. You can get a ton of information and a ton of experience with not a lot of money, and then you're able to decide, like, do you want to take on those bigger commitments with anything that you want to do with really with anybody, but especially with Rod as here. I'm curious, Rod, when you're actually looking to vet an operator, there's a lot of questions that are about like the deal, right? About like, well, what does the loan structure need to look like, the asset, seasoning of the asset, if there's going to be a value add component to it, change in rents, all that great stuff, right? I'm curious though, in your experience, have you been able to find what you perceive to be the parts of the character of a good operator? Is there a general throughput line of like, this is the type of person who typically makes a good operator?
That's a very intuitive type question. And I'm going to tell you, one of the things you should do absolutely in any interaction with another human being is trust your intuition, trust your gut. And I teach this to my students because, most of these deals are done in partnerships. And so And by the way, if you go to Rod's links, there's a bunch of free books there. And one of the books is the questions you should ask before you get into a partnership, as an aside. But one of the top things is to trust your gut. Your brain is incredibly powerful, and it will pick up on micro nuances that you subconsciously, that you might not even be consciously aware of. And so if something doesn't feel right, for God's sakes, you got to trust it. And a great example of this is a book called Blink. I think the author is Pressman. But he talks about how an art expert, best art experts in the world, can look at a painting and they know it's a fraud, but they don't know why they know it's a fraud. So that's an example of that. But women are better at this than men, for sure. Better with the intuition thing. But you got to trust your gut. And so, but you've got to ask all the questions too. Like even when you're getting into a partnership, but I've got my list of GP questions here, by the way, so for example, I'll rattle off a few of these, who are the actual sponsors of the deal? What's their experience? How long have they been doing real estate? Do they have construction management experience? What's their target market? Do they hold operating reserves? Like we always do 6 months of expenses as operating reserves, conservative. What's the investment criteria? Do you have any references? Why'd you choose this market? Do you have any other assets in this market? What's your business plan for the asset? What kind of financing are you getting on this asset? Super important. Do you plan to refinance, get a supplemental, or what's your liquidation event? What's your CapEx budget? Is any of it for deferred maintenance? Who's going to do the actual work? Who's going to manage the renovation project? Who's the asset manager? On and on and on. So you get an idea. These are the kinds of questions that you're going to want to ask before you give your hard-earned freaking money to somebody, right? So, anyway,
and how do they
I would
get that
encourage
again?
you.
What is that again?
Just go to text the word links to 72345 or go to rodslinks.com. This free book is in there as well as other free books, and my bootcamp site is there. Again, if you want to check, go to the virtual bootcamp January 6th and 7th, use the code ROYAL, and you come for $97. And again, I don't sell anything there. It's 16 hours of training about multifamily, every aspect of the multifamily business. I've got the manual here. It's like 2 inches thick. Okay. It's not a tease you stuff. It's drink through a freaking fire hose. But again, if you want to learn this business even passively, why not spend a couple of days to have a great understanding of it before you give your money to somebody? To me, it's kind of a no-brainer.
I'm curious about that, Rod, too. Is like, what would be the I can imagine somebody asking me about this. I say, hey, Scott, should I go to the boot camp? My initial reaction would always be like, yeah, you should definitely go to the boot camp. And they say, well, what's the result that's going to happen after out of the boot camp? Like, what am I going to be now able to do that I wasn't able to do like beforehand?
Sure. You'll be able to know if a deal makes sense. You'll be able to understand the metrics that are used when evaluating a deal. One of the things we do is we go through a sample deal package, which is an offering statement. It'll probably be about the asset we're raising money for. All the things we look at before we get into a deal. What do we want to see? What do we want to see in that area, in that submarket? What do we want to see in the median income? What do we want to see in the median home price compared to the price we're paying? What does the employment industry look like there? Is it a one-horse town, or is there a lot of employment diversity? And on and on and on. There's all of these things that you'll learn if you attend the boot camp. So again, for $97, you can pay a little bit more and get the recordings if you can't do that weekend. Again, if you're going to give somebody $100,000 or $50,000 or even more than that as passively investing, for God's sake, spend a little time to understand what you're doing. That's all I would tell you. If it's going to be multifamily, if it's something else, then I'm not your guy. But if you're thinking multifamily, for God's sakes, you're crazy not to take the advantage of this opportunity. And then maybe you want to be an operator. Maybe you actually want to do this for yourself. Then you definitely should be there. So
that's awesome, Rod. Well, I love that, man. I encourage everybody to go ahead and sign up. Go to Rod. I guess it's
Rod's links. Rod's links, and that's my link tree. Also, subscribe to my freaking podcast, man. I mean, there's a reason it's the largest in the world. That in itself will help you a lot. Okay, and if you're really serious about this, listen to or watch as much of the podcast between now and the boot camp as you can, because I'm going to tell you, incredible opportunities upon us, Scott. I mean, we're seeing it already. I haven't bought a deal in a year, and I'm getting this deal at 30% less than it was under contract for, and other units around it have sold for. So deals are coming. So, some people say it could be the greatest transfer of wealth we see in our lifetime, and there's going to be incredible opportunity, and we're starting to see it already. So if you're thinking about doing this actively, don't wait. Get up to speed as fast as you can, because this could be a once in a lifetime opportunity. I hope it's not as bad as I think it could be, but we'll see.
That's awesome,
Yeah.
Rod. Well, thank you so much for
Yeah.
coming on the show today, man. I encourage everybody to go take action right now. Get a hold of Rod's links there. Sign up for that boot camp. Really get into the immersive kinds of educational experiences. Everyone is really going to be where it's at. Like that's the place where you really get into starting to be able to feel through what is good information that's out there. There's a lot you can learn from listening from a podcast or like reading an article. But these kinds of like boot camps that you do for multiple days, like in a row, I can't emphasize it enough about how absolutely essential those are to really get up to speed much, much, much quicker than just piecemeal education, while you're happen to be driving in a car for 20 minutes on a Thursday. It's just not even comparable what's there. So thank you, Rod, for coming on the show today and helping everybody get plugged into your network and evaluating your deals and everything.
Appreciate it.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us here today on the Real Estate Nerds podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Scott Royal Smith with Royal Legal Solutions, your one-stop shop for everything asset protection, estate planning, tax, and insurance. I'm looking forward to catch you guys here next time.